If you want to read more fantasy romance, then this video is meant for you, because I will be going over different types of fantasy romance, from vampires to fae and even dragons, and give you a few recommendations for each. So hello my fellow fantasy book lovers and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, hi and welcome. My name is Kathy, I'm a god girl from Belgium who loves to read fantasy books. So for today's video, I actually compiled a list of the fantasy books that I personally really enjoyed within different realms of fantasy romance. And these are gonna go from very normal romantasy to smutty romantasy. And for each book, I will of course be mentioning how intense it is. And of course, I will be talking about my personal favorites at the end of the video, which is vampire romance. But to start off this video, I want to talk about fantasy romance that involves dragons. And there are two different types of book within this. There are books where there are humans who are tied to dragons, and there are books where there is dragon shifters. The first type of book is Fourth Wing and Iron Flame are the biggest examples that I can give you for now. I am reading into the Fireborne trilogy by Rosaria Munda. So far there isn't really a romance subplot happening as far as I'm reading, but there might come in the future. But in Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, there is a very strong romance line available in starting the first book between the main characters. So the main character, Violet Sorrengail, is involved with Xaden. In the first book it starts, and in the second book it picks up again. So there is definitely a little bit of spice happening in those books. And it is told as enemies to lovers, but it's not as harsh as that, in my personal opinion. There is a little bit of spice here and there. The spice is good, but it's not purely about the spice. So if you're not familiar with Fourth Wing and Iron Flame yet, I personally really enjoyed them. They are on that subtle edge between YA fantasy and adult fantasy. So if you're an adult who loves fantasy, you might find it a little bit childish. The ages of the people involved are also a little bit younger than what I personally like most. But yeah, it was a fun read and the spice was fun. And then for the people who are into dragon changelings, for now I have only read the first book of the 3 or 4 books that are available in the Court of Dragons and Crowns series. Now, the first book is a contest for human girls who need to enter this contest, or human women, because they're beginning of their 20s, most of them. Some are younger, some are a little bit older. But they have to win this competition. There's 4 girls who will win this, and they will be able to marry one of the 4 dragon princes. So in this book you already get the build-up, the scene setting for the main character who is going to get involved with at least one of the 4 dragons. The first book is not spicy. There is a little bit of kissy-touchy involved, but not really spice involved. However, I've been told that from the second book, and especially the last book, it builds up a lot more. So if you want a fully fledged series with dragon changelings and a romance subplot, then I think this might be good for you. I personally read the first book in a day, and for me that's saying a lot. I usually spend about 3 to 4 to 5 days reading books. So a book a week is more or less what I read. So for me to finish the first book in a day and then immediately ordering the second and the third says a lot. I hope the spice itself will be as good as the build-up that I've had so far, because I'm really into it. And then of course, once we get into the realm of fae and fairy fantasy, Sarah Yemas is the reference. So if you like her writing style, I think you will really enjoy the books. They are quite repetitive in my opinion, but ACOTAR, Throne of Glass and Crescent City all build up into the same world, more or less. They interfere with each other every now and then. So apparently if you're into her writing style, these books are really good. I gave it a try. I personally didn't enjoy it. There is quite a lot of spicy things happening in the series. Those scenes were enjoyable, but I personally didn't like the overall story of it. And that's fine. There is, however, one book that I really want to recommend if you're into fairies, etc. and want the romance line of that, and it is Mountains Made of Glass by Scarlett St. Clair. Now, Scarlett St. Clair is the same author who writes the Hades X Persephone series, which has plenty of spice, so we know she can write it well. And I really liked the romantasy in this book. The book is a little bit darker and the romance only starts near the ending of the book, but there is a lot of build-up and a lot of tension between the 2 main characters, which I personally really enjoyed. So if you haven't read it, it's a really short book. I think it's not even 150 pages, and I found it very I like the build-up of it. I like the little bit of spices that happen here and there. So for me, the book was really worth it. Then we have 2 books, and the 3rd book is coming out this year that is like a mix of all of the tropes together. It is A Witch's Guide to Fake Dating a Demon, A Demon's Guide to Wooing a Witch, and the newest book that is coming out in August this year is A Werewolf's Guide to Seducing a Vampire. So you have all these different tropes within the books, but of course the main ones are the ones that are in the title, so a witch and a demon. In the first 2 books at least, and in the 3rd book it will be werewolf vampire. And these books are actually romantasy based on the romance. All of the other books that I've previously mentioned have another plot line that is really heavily present. These books mainly focus on the romance between the 2 characters that are bound to get involved. The spice is really good, the build-up is really nice. These are fast and easy reads, but know that the other plots happening are not as important or as present in the book. So this is pure romance with a lot of smut in it, and I absolutely love it. I love the writing style of the author, and I could highly recommend all 3 books. If you are into gods and mythology, and very specifically Greek mythology, then there is of course the Hades X Persephone series by Scarlett St. Clair. Now this series focuses on Hades and Persephone, so she has actually written the books from both perspectives. So book 1 from Hades and book 1 for Persephone are actually the same book, but written from a different perspective, which doesn't make sense to me because the last book, the 7th book, is actually the 2 combined. So I personally would advise you to just pick, if you prefer books written from a female perspective or the male one, and just read those and then the last one, but don't spend your money and your time on getting both of them unless you're really into having like the full story twice. Because for me, even if there was like months between reading the first Persephone book and the first Hades book, I knew what was going to happen and it was just very boring to me. The smut in this book is very highly present. There is another plot line happening as well. I really enjoy this book series, except for the fact that there's like 2 books that are the same. And I don't like that. And then we get to the last category in this list, and it is vampire romantasy. And I love vampires. If you've seen any of my videos that have gotten like a lot of views, it's the vampire themed books, and it's because I just love reading about vampires. So I'm gonna start with the smuttiest of all the vampire romances that I've read, and I actually almost DNF'd the book because it had too much smut, and that's saying a lot. I borrowed this book to one of my friends who also reads a lot of smut, and she was like, how even? So she didn't finish the book so far. I'm not sure what her complete thoughts will be on it, but I felt it lacked in everything except the smut. The smut was good. And it is Court of the Vampire Queen by Katie Robert. And I didn't know Katie Robert before this book, but apparently she writes a lot of smut, not purely fantasy, but also like in other genres, and she is really known for that. So if you want a smut-based book with vampires, then go for this one. If you want a little bit more plot, then just leave it to the side because it has holes in it, like Jesus Christ. Things go way too fast at some points. The smut happens, like 3 scenes, like 3 chapters, and then it's like, oh yeah, we were going somewhere. And then she like quickly writes something. And in 2 pages, like a full battle happens and they win. And then like, it was a little bit ridiculous in my personal opinion. Up next, we have a vampire series that is very promising, but that I need to continue, and it is Filthy Rich Vampire. And I believe there's 4 books in this series. I only recently just read the first one, and I have the second one ready to be read somewhere. But the thing is, the first book ended on a downer for me personally, and I don't really like to pick up books that like pull me down mentally. So for me, I just keep the second book aside until I feel like wanting to read it. In this book, we have this filthy rich vampire who gets involved with a human girl. He needs to marry, he doesn't want to marry to the people that his like vampire coven want him to marry into, so he pretends to be dating her, and of course they start actually dating. So this human girl is still a virgin, and apparently if a vampire and a virgin do things together, then they get bonded somehow, and he doesn't want to do that. But other than that, there are a lot of spicy scenes happening in this book that aren't like purely the you-know-what activity. So I really did enjoy this book, And this book actually reminded me of like the very intense series that you sometimes get on TV, where it's like this rom-com with like epic highs and epic lows and like full drama happening. That's what this book is, but then with vampires. So if you're into that, you will really like this. Up next, we have Bride by Ailey Hazelwood. Now, Ailey Hazelwood is a romance author who has already written a lot of very successful books. Before you start reading this book, know that it's about a werewolf and a vampire getting involved, or like they have to get involved because they need to marry each other to create this pact of peace between vampires and werewolves in a society there. They live together with humans. So this girl has already been collateral, as they call it, for the human and the vampire communities, and now she's actually getting married to a werewolf after her first like collateral time frame has been done with. So she is now marrying this werewolf, and there is a lot of build-up. I really like the tension between the two characters. Of course, the smut starts happening near halfway to the end of the book, because there is build-up in this book, actually, not like Court of the Vampire Queen, where it's like, chapter 1, here you go. So for this book, I would highly recommend looking up the knotting kink before you actually read it, and then decide if it is something for you or not. I personally am not into the knotting kink, but it didn't disturb me as I was reading the book. I really enjoyed this book. I think it was a 4 or 5-star read for me this year, because it read so easily. I liked the build-up, I liked the smut, I liked that there was a lot going on that was not purely smut related. So yeah, a good book for me. After that, we have Serpent and the Wings of Night. Now, this book is set very much into a competition, the first book at least. And into this first book, we follow the female main character, who is the daughter of a vampire king, but she's not a vampire, she's a human girl. And she participates in these trials that happen every X amount of years. And if she completes these trials, she will be able to go to one of the gods that the vampires admire and ask her for a gift. And they call her Little Viper at times, hence Serpent. And then the Wings of Night is actually one of the other characters in this book. He is a male character who is like trying to see who she is, and also like working together, because there's a big group of vampires entered into this contest, and they each want to survive until the end, but they actually can murder each other in between the parts of the competition as well. So like they really have to stick together. So they form a small alliance with another person involved, and they try to really like stick it out through the competition. And near the end of the book, you start seeing that they get feelings for each other. The end of the book was a total like, what the hell? A lot happened in a very short time frame. So I really want to read the second one soon, and I hope that the smut continues on into the second book as well. But know that the main plot is the competition, and there is a small secondary plot that starts early on, but it like slowly, very slowly builds up until the end of the book. So Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. And then we have a book that is like part of the same realm of this book, and is called 6 Scorched Roses. Now, 6 Scorched Roses is a very thin and small book. The main character is a human girl called Lilith, and she lives in a village that has been cursed by a god, and like this curse makes that people start to die and like fall apart into pieces. So for the longest time, she has been trying to find a cure for it, and now she thinks that to make this cure, she needs vampire blood. And lo and behold, there is only one vampire in the vicinity. She goes to that vampire and she offers him 6 roses in exchange for 6 vials of blood, and that happens over like a time frame of a few months. Of course, the vampire and the human girl get involved eventually, and I really liked the smut of this book. I really liked the build-up, and also this girl knows she's going to die. And she has not a lot to lose, because she's already lost mostly of her family. She doesn't really have friends. The village has outcasted her. So the contrast with these two characters, of the vampire with the eternal life and the girl that has kind of nothing to lose anymore, like that connection that they form, I personally really loved. So in this book, there is a main plot line happening. There is some smut in this book, but because it is so short, it feels like there was a lot more than there actually was. So I really love this book. I preferred this book over Serpent and the Wings of Night, but if you have read Serpent and the Wings of Night, then some of the things that they talk about in book 1, like the cities and the contest, etc., does come back into 6 Scorched Roses, but you don't have to have read it to know what is going on, basically. And I think later on in the series, they will actually connect, and like the people from Six Scorched Roses will come into the books of Serpent and Wings of Night, if I'm not mistaken. And I want to end this video with another series of books with vampires that is very smut heavy. It is by Scarlett St. Clair, and it is King of Battle and Blood and Queen of Myth and Monsters, and then a third book that is coming out this year. In this book we follow the two main characters. In the first book they don't know each other at all. The girl of the book is actually the princess of a kingdom, and the kingdom is trying to avoid a conflict with the vampire king, and the vampire king and this princess have to get married. Now they actually fall in love with each other and more starts happening. So the build-up in book one I absolutely loved. The smut in book one was very good as well. The other plot lines are a little bit more subdued, but they are there. Book 2, however, is very weird to me. The smut was amazing, but they start pulling other themes into this vampire realm that I wasn't really too sure about how I liked them or not. So I hope for book 3 that they get back into the vampire smut and that we will see more of that. But nonetheless, if you're into very heavy smut books with vampires, then this is a very good recommendation. So these are some of my personal fantasy romance books that I could highly recommend to you. I put in a little bit of every sub-genre of fantasy, so vampires, dragons, fae, gods, etc. And I hope this gives you something to read in the future. Of course, feel free to let me know in a comment down below which fantasy romance books did you enjoy, and also feel free to let us know how intense the romance is in the book and if there is smut or not. Give this video a big thumbs up if you liked it, and of course don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I make weekly videos and I would love to have you for every single one of them. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you very soon with the next video. Bye!